Will the British Foreign Secretary David Lammy one day stand trial at The Hague for complicity in Israel's genocide against the Palestinian people? Now, here is a question which was put by the Tory former Cabinet Minister, Kit Malthouse, in the House of Commons this week.
Kit Malthouse.
Madam Deputy Speaker, like others in this House, I'm frankly astonished at the statement of the Foreign Secretary. At a time when we've got daily lynchings and expulsions on the West Bank, dozens being murdered as they beg for aid, I'm just beyond words, really, at his inaction and, frankly, complicity by inaction at what is going on. He himself said there's a massive prison camp being constructed in the south of Gaza. He knows that leading genocide scholars from across the world now are ringing the alarm bells, and yet he has the temerity to show up to this House and wave his checkbook as if it's going to salve his conscience. Can he not see that his inaction and, frankly, cowardice is making this country irrelevant? Can he also not see the personal risk to him, given our international obligations, that he may end up at The Hague because of his inaction? And finally, really frankly, an appeal to the Labour backbenchers. We can't get your leadership to change their minds. Only you can, if you organise and insist on change.
Before I bring in the Foreign Secretary, can I just remind members that we have got other business to proceed to tonight. So please keep questions and answers short. Foreign Secretary.
I understand the fury that the right honourable gentleman feels, but I have to tell him, that it demeans his argument when he personalises it in the way that he does, and it is not, and it's unbecoming and not something that the House expects, particularly of more senior members.
Here's the thing, right? This Tory MP has shown infinitely more moral clarity over Israel's genocide than the entire Labour front bench put together. And also note how Lammy tries to suggest that Kit Malthouse somehow personally abused him. There is literally nothing insulting about anything that Malthouse said. He asked a perfectly reasonable question, which Lammy just didn't want to answer. And there is an understandable reason for that. Because Lammy, you see, is complicit in the crime of the century, which is Israel's Western-facilitated genocidal extermination of the Palestinian people in Gaza. Lammy's a lawyer and he should know what international law says. Let's start with the Genocide Convention of 1948. That identifies 5 acts which are punishable. As you might expect, one is genocide, and also listed is conspiracy to commit genocide, as well as direct and public incitement to commit genocide, attempt to commit genocide, and finally, and of specific relevance here, complicity in genocide. The British government is specifically arming Israel, indeed providing key components for Israel's F-35 jets whose bombs have wiped Gaza from the face of the earth and which are shredding the bodies of little children, and without which the genocide would not be possible. The genocide which those F-35 jets are specifically perpetrated. That complicity doesn't end there, as we'll discuss, but the Genocide Convention also imposes a legal obligation on signatories to prevent and punish the crime of genocide. The British government signed the convention the day it was published at the United Nations in 1948. We incorporated it into our statute books 55 years ago. In 2007, the International Court of Justice found that Serbia was not directly responsible or complicit in the 1995 Srebrenica genocide committed by the Bosnian Serb army. It nonetheless ruled it had breached the Genocide Convention because it had failed to prevent the genocide from taking place and did not cooperate with the International Court in punishing those who directly perpetrated the genocide. Then there's the Arms Trade Treaty. Britain ratified that in April 2014. Under Articles 6 and 7, Britain is forbidden from authorising arms transfers if it knows that weapons would be used in genocide, in crimes against humanity or war crimes, even if it doesn't have certain knowledge, which doesn't actually apply here, because there is more evidence than any other crime as it actually happened in history, then such transfers are legally prohibited if there's an overriding risk that such weapons could be used to commit or facilitate grave violations of international law. Under the Arms Trade Treaty, providing crucial parts or components for fighter jets in such circumstances qualifies as providing weapons, and that includes, therefore, components for Israel's F-35 jets. Then there's the Geneva Convention, which forbids the litany of war crimes and crimes against humanity being committed every single day by the Israeli state. If Britain, as it is doing, provides weapons for such atrocities, then it is violating the Geneva Convention. As for war crimes, Britain is a founding member of the International Criminal Court. Last year, its lawyers issued arrest warrants for the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and his former Defense Minister Yoav Gallant on charges of war crimes and crimes against humanity. This was based on charges presented by the ICC's chief prosecutor, the British lawyer Karim Khan, last May. The ICC has ordered that future charges must be done in secret rather than publicly, and it has also made clear that more charges are to come, not just against Netanyahu and Gallant. And yet the British government recently defended the sale of F-35 components in the High Court on the grounds that there was no evidence of women and children being deliberately targeted in Gaza, and there was no serious risk of a genocide. Who to believe here? The British government, as it supplies weapons to a genocidal state, or the dozens of American doctors and nurses who have served in Gaza's hospitals, who last October testified to the New York Times that they had received the bodies of Palestinian children over and over again, shot in the head or chest by Israeli snipers. All about Israeli soldiers themselves who confessed to the Israeli-Palestinian magazine Plus 972 magazine that they were deliberately targeting children. Let me read this from a soldier's testimony. There was a boy who entered the off-limit zone. He didn't do anything. Other soldiers claimed to have seen him standing and talking to people. That's it. They dropped a grenade from a drone. In another incident, he said, soldiers tried to kill a child riding a bicycle a great distance away from them. In most cases, there was nothing you could tell yourself. There was no way to complete the sentence, we killed them because. Or let's listen to the British surgeon, Dr. Nick Maynard, who's serving in Nassau Hospital.
And I've seen, I think, probably a dozen now seriously injured young boys who have been shot in the abdomen or the chest. One of them, a 12-year-old, died on the operating table because the injuries were so severe. And they're all from gunshot wounds. And they all described to me, and their families described to me, and indeed colleagues of mine, Gazan medical colleagues who are looking for food as well, have gone to these same distribution sites and witnessed these injuries as well. They're all describing that they're being shot by Israeli soldiers or by the quadcopters, the drones which are being remotely controlled by the Israelis and fire, often indiscriminately, often targeted. And I'm seeing we're all seeing a very clear pattern of injuries. I've seen the abdominal injuries, but my colleagues in the emergency room describe a very clear pattern where on particular days they'll see different body parts targeted. So on one day, there'll all be abdominal gunshot wounds. On another day, there'll all be head gunshot wounds or neck gunshot wounds. On another day, there'll be arm or leg gunshot wounds. And on last Saturday, there were 4 young teenage boys, all brought in very, very rapidly in succession with gunshot wounds to their testicles. So they're clearly being targeted to their testicles. And this is a pattern that we're seeing every day, that these young teenage boys are systematically being targeted. And it's almost as if a game is being played, that they're deciding to shoot the head today and the neck tomorrow and the testicles the day after.
Just process that for a minute. On each day, different parts of the victims' bodies are being targeted. On one day, it's the head, the other neck, the other the abdomen, the other testicles. He suggests that shows a game is being played by Israeli soldiers to target different parts of these children's bodies each day. What of the charge of genocide? A consensus of genocide scholars has concluded that Israel is committing genocide, including Israeli scholars Omar Bartov, Ratzi Gal, Amos Goldberg, Daniel Blattman, and Shmuel Lederman. Omar Bartov is professor of Holocaust and Genocide Studies at Brown University, one of the preeminent scholars of genocide on earth. He penned an essay last week for the New York Times entitled, "I'm a genocide scholar, I know it when I see it." In it he wrote, "My inescapable conclusion has become that Israel is committing genocide against the Palestinian people. Having grown up in a Zionist home, lived the first half of my life in Israel, served in the IDF as a soldier and officer, and spent most of my career researching and writing on war crimes and the Holocaust, this was a painful conclusion to reach, and one that I resisted as long as I could. But I've been teaching classes on genocide for a quarter of a century. I can recognize one when I see one. The evidence could hardly be more overwhelming. Israel has officially made clear that when it's finished with Gaza, there will be no living Palestinians left there. Benjamin Netanyahu told Israel's parliament, "We are destroying more and more homes, and Gazans have nowhere to return to. The only inevitable outcome will be the wish of Gazans to emigrate outside of the Gaza Strip." As a former Israeli Prime Minister Ehud Olmert puts it, Israel's building a concentration camp. Gaza survivors will be compelled to live in this tiny camp before they're deported. Those who refuse will be exterminated, judged to be Hamas and thus legitimate military targets. According to Eyal Ben-Venisti, he was the Israeli lawyer chosen by Israel to defend it from charges of genocide at the International Court of Justice. This is a manifest war crime and crime against humanity. He subsequently signed a letter declaring this plan under certain conditions could amount to the crime of genocide. Gaza has now reached a tipping point. There has been a sudden spike in the numbers dying of starvation or being admitted to hospital with hunger. That's because Israel imposed a total siege on Gaza at the beginning of March and abolished the UN system delivering aid in favour of a murderous new system where Palestinians are massacred as they seek limited and often unusable aid. Around 1,000 Palestinians have been murdered at aid points alone. The Union of Agence France-Presse, a crucial international, of course, news agency, issued a statement declaring that without intervention, the last reporters in Gaza will die of hunger, something it says there is no precedent for since the agency has been in existence, and that was in World War II. We warned you. We warned you, David Lammy. You had more than ample warning with 21 months of live stream daily genocidal depravity. No crime in history has been so documented in history as it happened. No crime has been so confessed ever in history as it happened. Yet you continue to supply those crucial components for Israel's F-35 jets. You continue to refuse to describe even a single Israeli act as a war crime because you know that imposes legal obligations on you. You continue annual British trade with Israel worth £5.8 billion. You made the tokenistic gesture of suspending talks over a new trade treaty with Israel, and then the very next week, the British embassy in Israel celebrated the arrival of the UK trade envoy. When you imposed sanctions on two far-right Israeli ministers, the justification you offered was their horrendous extremist language rather than what they've actually done, because you know that would implicate the British government and indeed yourself. Crucially, you refuse to impose meaningful sanctions on Israel. Yet the only legal action your government has taken is against those opposed to the genocide by prescribing Palestine action. Right now, those opposed to genocide will be hauled through the British courts. You have made a bet, however. You've made a bet that an iron dome of Israeli and Western impunity will protect you forever. That is quite the bet. You are indeed safe now, but will that be the case forever? In 5 years, in 10 years, in 20 years? My view is you will lose your bet, Mr. Lammy. You and your colleagues have willingly made yourself complicit in a genocide. And one day there will be a knock at your door and you'll be led away in handcuffs to face trial for your role in genocide. These are because of choices you made, despite all the evidence you had at the time, overwhelming, incontrovertible evidence, endless evidence, actions, consequences. The Hague awaits, Mr. Lammy, both for you and for your colleagues. Please like and subscribe with your thoughts and your comments. Help us take on the pro-genocide media at patreon.com/ownjones84. I'm travelling abroad at the moment, hence the slightly odd setup. I don't have a camera with me, but I've done my best here. I hope that was useful. We've got to keep the receipts. We've got to make it clear that there will be consequences. Some of you are defeatist. You think there will never, ever be justice. But this crime is too big. It is too extreme. It is too depraved. It is too documented. It is too confessed to. We have to believe that the perpetrators and those complicit will face justice. Because if we don't believe that, then it will be a self-fulfilling prophecy that justice will not arrive. Justice will arrive. You've got to make it so. Please like and subscribe. Leave your thoughts in your comments. Help us take on the pro-genocide media at patreon.com/ownjones84. You can listen to us on the podcast. Type in Owen Jones Podcast wherever you get your podcasts. Share the video. I'll speak to you soon.